And we are officially live. Come on, come all. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. You know what we do, what we don't, what we is, what we isn't, and what we is here today. I got with me tonight Eggs for Brecky, aka Daniel. Say hello, my dude.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And we're here for the live discussion for chapter 1077 of One Piece. Um, we haven't talked about this chapter yet at all. Uh, I thought this chapter, just to summarize it, not a lot happened. It was a very short and concise sort of chapter in my mind. I don't know about you, but it just sort of, weirdly enough, there wasn't sort of a lot to talk about with it this week. So
Yeah,
this is probably ended up being a pretty quick stream, in all honesty.
yeah,
Uh,
true.
um, that being said, let's just start off where we normally do, starting at the beginning of the chapter and working our way through. So we've got Jerma 66's Cold Blooded Voyage, Volume 32. Wait a sec, it was all Vegapunk's fault. We have Judge and Caesar out of breath, coming to agreement that Vegapunk is apparently the source of all their problems in their life, and they're taking no accountability for themselves. Um, One thing I want to point out here, though, is I don't know if this is a gag, because it could be a gag, but Caesar is injured, which implies that Judge was able to hurt him, whether through technology or potentially Haki.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, he wouldn't fight him, right? Unless he could hurt him.
Well, I mean, we saw in the previous cover stories of back in the day he wasn't able to hurt him.
Yeah, okay, right.
So it is possible that it's just sort of a gag thing. Like Caesar wasn't turning intangible when they were like punching each. You know, it could be sort of like
Yeah,
viewed as like a dumb sibling fight. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
Or this could be implying that either Judge has at least a little bit of Haki, which hasn't been confirmed before, or maybe he's able to damage Caesar with his science. So maybe he's got a way to. Maybe his Garuda spear has like a little bit of sea stone in it or something like that.
yeah. That makes sense.
But I love how Reiju and Ichiji are just watching on, just like, you guys are pathetic. Um, I don't know where this story cover series goes from here, though, to be completely honest. I know this was building up a bit of resolution, but now we're out of the Mads flashback. Unless it's going to continue on and they're eventually going to pick up Queen, um, I don't really see where it's going to head to from here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. I mean, it seems like it's basically just come into modern time, right? Like whereas
Mm.
previously it was talking about their history. So I guess now we're finally going to actually start getting some story progression, of what's going to happen. I mean, it seems like they seemingly want to take out Vegapunk.
Yeah.
Would be really interesting if, like you were saying, with like that fleet that's coming towards Egghead. It'd be really funny if Egghead turned out to be like an arc that's like as big as Wano, but
Yeah.
shorter.
Yeah, like, it's just the conflict, but none of the build up, which
Yeah,
almost would make it better in a way, because although Wano had a lot of like really good emotional ties set into it, it also failed a lot on delivering for a fair few of them.
yeah,
Like,
fully agree.
yeah. Sorry, we're getting a bit of that feedback again.
Uh,
It's alright. Yeah, it's electronic. Yeah. All right. Gotta love the technical difficulties. Oh, that's stopped there now. Yeah. Okay. All right.
how are we going now?
Perfect. Back on board.
Okay. We'll see. We'll
Alright.
see.
Well,
I might just swap to my AirPods otherwise.
yeah,
Seems like my mic is not having fun.
no worries. All right, let's keep moving through. So we pick up now with Sentamaru in the Fabrio stratum on Egghead, and he starts recounting the. Hang on a second. I'm just gonna mute you a little bit because it is coming through, but it's coming through a lot more faint than it was before, so it's not too bad.
Okay. How about I swap over to my just my phone
Yeah. Okay.
and just talk through my AirPods?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll be back in a tick.
No worries. I'll keep blasting through this then. Okay, so we pick up with the Fabrio stratum Egghead. We have Sentamaru. You guys have to get off this island. What are you talking about, Sentamaru-san? Tell us what's going on here. Why did you deploy the Pacifista? So we've got the citizens or the other researchers on Egghead, who are all aware that the Pacifistas are now making a move and doing stuff. Questioning Sentamaru, obviously, leading up as well into Sentamaru giving a recount of the events of O'Hara and the O'Hara incident, which is really interesting. Are you there again, Eggs?
Just checking. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Ah, perfect.
All right. Audio's a bit echoey, but that's perfectly fine anyway. It's better than the feedback.
Yeah.
So essentially, we get the refresher of the O'Hara incident, and I love this here because I was questioning this myself, but we have Sentamaru say, the fact they're targeting Grandpa Punk shows how serious they are about erasing him. They're willing to lose the world's greatest mind over this. That's why I think whatever's going to be coming will be even more monumental, and this place will be ground zero. So they think this is going to be worse than the O'Hara incident. I'd like to point out the O'Hara incident was 5 vice admirals. Okay, I should specify. A buster call is meant to be 10 ships headed up by 5 vice admirals and led by 1 admiral. In the event of the O'Hara incident, Aokiji gave his gold transponder snail to Spandam, so obviously Aokiji wasn't present for the buster call, but it was still headed up by 10 warships with 5 vice admirals, right? We already have confirmed that there's going to be 100 ships, so this is already arguably 10 times bigger than a buster call. And we know that there's multiple Grand Line bases that are being dragged into this. And as we've already seen throughout the New World already, each Grand Line base has multiple Vice Admirals working at it. It's not just one Vice Admiral per, Grand Line base, right? For example, you have Virgo, who was the base commander with Smoker under him, who also had Commodore Yadrasui there. You had the likes of Bastille with Maynard under him, around Dressrosa. All these Vice Admirals that have control of a Grand Line base have multiple Vice Admirals under them, right? Meaning we have at least 2 Grand Line bases confirmed, which is at least 4 Vice Admirals then seemingly coming, plus the likes of an Admiral, plus the likes of whatever security detail that Saturn had, because although we saw the likes of Kizaru looking after Saturn, it should be noted it's highly unlikely that Saturn is even able to legally move out of Marisha without some CP0 being present. Like, hypothetically, and that's not to say that they're going to be ridiculously strong people, but so far everyone in CP0 that we've seen so far, they're at least better than CP9 pre-time skip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that he's on the move at all, and as we saw, he has his own individual ship, right? He has his own ship that's a world government ship, not relating to the marine ships, right? So the world government ship that he brought could have some CP members on it of various levels of strength. So in terms of what we've seen, we've got all this that's crazy. Technically, Dole was also trying to conscript Garp into coming to this event as well. It's just Garp was already talking about doing his own thing, obviously going to Hajinosu instead, right? But we have no idea the scale that's going to be coming here. In fact, I actually think what's going to end up happening here is this is going to be the singular largest fleet we've seen on the ocean so far. Obviously, with 100 ships. I think making it worse, I think this is going to be used to introduce the final vice admirals that will be introduced into the story leading into the final war. I think this is going to be sort of like how when Whitebeard showed up at Marineford with the 47 ships, 43 ships, right? And we just got face after face after face after face. I feel like it's going to be the same thing where we're going to see a couple of familiar faces, but we're also going to see a hell of a lot of new faces in terms of just random vice admirals and stuff like that. And I'd also like to point out, right, a lot of people sort of forget this. Although we're at a stage now where people like vice admirals wouldn't give the likes of, you know, Luffy and Zoro a lot of trouble, right? Doesn't mean, like, we've seen them struggle in numbers enough to be delayed and slowed down. You know what I mean? Like, look at them versing the Gifters and stuff like that in Wano. In the Ohara incident, I don't know if you remember this, the 5 Vice Admirals never actually made a move during the incident. They were on their ship just commanding, right? The Straw Hats were almost taken out by 200 soldiers, and 200 soldiers is a fair amount, right? But we'd also already seen on that day Luffy single-handedly take out 500 soldiers in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The 200 soldiers that were in that buster call at Ohara, right? We saw multiple with Devil Fruits. All of them were the rank of lieutenant or captain and higher, right? So if in 10 ships, you've got 200 people in that caliber, in 100 ships, we should be seeing close to 1,000 people that have like assorted Devil Fruits and Rokashiki and stuff like that, at least.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild to think about. Whether or not it actually plays out like that or not will be completely different. But I don't know. Like at this point in time, they're obviously doing a lot to try and hype up the onslaught that's coming. And I'd like to point out, right, like they've just deployed 50 pacifistas with shields to defend the outside of the island. Right?
Yeah.
Like 50 pacifistas is a lot. Like we saw.
And we don't even know if shields is the only upgrade they have, right? Mm-hmm. They're probably overall Greta as well. They could have like queens like rapid fire laser stuff, and like they could have so much amazing better technology. Because when you think about it, like what we saw, right, were like the kind of like the first pacifista like rollouts, and the first model is always going to be a bit crap compared to the better.
I can say 3 things off the top of my head that would be very basic that would make these things really relentless. And it's things we've seen in this arc that Vegapunk, like we've seen other scientists do already, but in this arc specifically, right? We've got invisibility. We've seen that Vegapunk can already master invisibility.
Yeah.
Right? So not only do these pacifistas have shields and that, what if they can start turning invisible? So you don't know when they're about to police you or control you.
Yeah, true.
That would be a huge detriment to anyone in this fleet that's not like, you know, a vice admiral, like anyone that doesn't have good observation haki. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from things like invisibility, we've seen that Vegapunk's already sort of figured out the ability to teleport. That's a possibility. Considering we've seen Seraphim Esper have Kuma's abilities, we actually haven't seen these pacifistas with a replicated version of Kuma's ability. Whether that's because they got limited DNA or it's just, you know, this, that, or the other. You know what I mean? Like, we know that the pacifistas are clones of Kuma, but you can't clone the Devil Fruit. You need to get the DNA from the original Devil Fruit holder and like implant it into the person, right? So if these new pacifistas don't have the Pawpaw Fruit, well, we've already seen that just based on actual raw science, that Vegapunk's already been able to figure out teleportation. So these things could have maybe a short-range teleportation with a cooldown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're looking at Kizaru's lasers with the potential of bubble shields that we haven't seen a limit of, but also, mind you, those bubble shields, what if that's the actual same bubbles that we see Lurth using in this chapter?
Yeah, exactly.
So they could be sea stone imbued, essentially, or sea prism imbued, so they could nullify Devil Fruit users, which would be a huge buff. The potential to turn invisible and to teleport short range. At this point, that is actually a really insane police force to deal with.
And there's just 50 of them standing along the coast.
Yeah.
Ready to...
Not to mention, right? You know how I said a couple weeks back, Kizaru could probably just stand at the coast and shoot lasers?
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing that we've never actually seen happen in the story yet that could be really interesting. And that's what happens when two of these light lasers collide.
True.
We've never seen a clash of light lasers, so maybe Kizaru actually gets nerfed here, because if he does try to just go, I'm going to just shoot the island a bit, cause a bit of a destructive diversion before we move in, he may get countered hard by the new pacifistas, since there's 50 of them. It takes 50 of them to counter just him, but at the same point in time, they could sort of maybe defend against that and keep at least Kizaru from immediately getting the ships to the shoreline.
Yep.
Which could be pretty monumentous. And like we said at the beginning, right, we've got the whole Judge and Vegapunk, Judge and Caesar thing. It's also possible that one of two things happens with their storyline. They either go, screw that guy, and they, start working on their science together, and maybe they come across Queen, who we haven't seen since being potentially taken out by Green Bull, right?
Yeah.
And maybe their stories all intertwined with the three of them, like reforming Mads. Or an alternative is they go, why don't we go take out Vegapunk together? Unaware of what's happening at Egghead.
Uh-huh.
Meaning they could actually come back into the main story.
Yeah, exactly.
And have the Germa fleet actually interact with part of this 100 ship fleet. Which would almost cement to the world government as well that the Germa is under Luffy. Even if they're not. Just the fact that they're getting involved again in another one of their conflicts. All crazy possibilities, all really interesting. We move on, though, to the next scene now. We have the control room on the 4th floor, so this is the middle tower at the very top where the control room is. We have the continuation of the fight against the Seraphim with Luffy Zoro and Lucci Kaku. We get a side-by-side Kong Organ and Handgun Yellow Lotus. Now, what's really important here is I'm going to point out it is obvious that they're trying to compare the Luffy and Lucci attacks. Obviously, I'm sort of in the camp that Luffy's attacks are a bit better, right?
Yeah.
But what's really important to note here is this is actually an upgraded technique of one of Lucci's previous techniques. As we saw when he took out Sentomaru, he used handgun instead of finger pistol, right?
Yes.
Seemingly what that difference was actually instead of using one finger, he used his whole hand, right? For the attack.
Yeah.
Well, handgun seems to be him doing... handgun Yellow Lotus, I should say. Yellow Lotus was the attack where he did his own version of a finger pistol Gatling pre-time skip. He actually used it to completely counter Gear 2 Gatling. So Luffy's Gear 2 Gatling was clashing equally with the Yellow Lotus handgun, right? Which, arguably as well, depending on how you view speeds in One Piece, all Gear 4 is Luffy using the strength of Gear 3 with the speed of Gear 2, right?
Yes.
So arguably, this is an attack happening at the same speed, and it's a lot more lethal version for Lucci, Although I will point out, even though it's a more lethal version, Luffy is just using actual Haki. We don't see any Haki from Lucci here. So it's implied that one's a Haki-based attack while the other's more an assassin-based attack. So I definitely lean towards Luffy's being slightly more impressive here, even though, like, you know how they showed... They did the same thing when Luffy and X-Drake took out a number in one shot. And at the time, a lot of people were like, oh my god, they're showing X-Drakes on an equal footing with Gear 4. And how I actually choose to look at that in hindsight is, well, just because Luffy used overkill for an attack doesn't mean his attack was equal to, say, X-Drake's. It just means in this instance, X-Drake is doing the same thing that Luffy's doing. Same thing here. Lucci's being able to do the same sort of thing that Luffy's doing, where he does like a Gatling-based attack, and it's showing that, you know, they're both trying... It's showing the symmetry there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the same sort of thing happens when we move on with the Zoro versus Kaku. Zoro and Kaku, sorry, versus S Hawk. Kaku does a Tempest Kick, and I actually really love this attack because he does one wide sweeping Tempest Kick, comes down to the ground, and a big wide sweeping Tempest Kick that is like a big spherical slash breaks off into a bunch of little slashes. I think that is a really, like, if this wasn't against S Hawk, this would actually be a pretty, like, devastating attack. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is actually sort of like almost a more impressive version of what King was doing at the beginning of the fight against Zoro, where he was sending out the air slashes, you know what I mean? Instead, though, Kaku's doing one air slash, and it's turning into multiple air slashes, instead of doing multiple air slashes, having to keep that pace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then Zoro uses an updated version of Lion Song called One Sword Style EI Lethal Lion Song. So I don't know what's being meant here by lethal, right? Obviously, in every other Lion Song, it's not got that lethal wording for it. So I wonder if he's using any form of advanced Haki here on this attack. Or if it's, by saying lethal Lion Song, if that's actually implying that the Lion Songs that he used in the past were meant to defeat an enemy, not kill an enemy. If that makes sense.
I think the lethal is basically just like a strength boost. But there definitely has to be a reason for it, right? Like, there has to be a reason why.
Why it's stronger.
Yeah, so I'm assuming some type of Haki. The other thing is, can you tell which of the swords he's using?
Yes. He is using... Whenever he uses the Lion Song, he always uses his Wado Ichimonji. His white sword.
Okay. So he's not particularly... Okay. Because it'd be interesting if he was using Enma here, and that's what makes it lethal. And it's basically just which blade he chooses.
Enma is actually the sword on the right side of his back. Also, I'd actually like to point this out, right? Because I've been going back over some of the stuff in Wano, doing some research for some other videos, right? Throughout the entire rooftop battle and beyond, the only time Zoro actually cut Kaido, when he did attacks with one sword, two swords, or three swords against Kaido, right? The only time it ever actually cut Kaido was the trajectory of the attacks that actually used Enma. Right? So you'd see like 3 slash lines, but only one slash actually made him bleed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you'd always see the extra aura on Enma as if it was drawing out his extra Haki, which would be his advanced armament, and then later Conquerors, right? With the Conquerors thing, when he actually unlocked that, obviously it was on all 3 swords, so all 3 swords were doing it equally. You know what I mean? But that is important to note there, that this S-Hawk has a stronger durability than Kaido, right? And Zoro's not using Enma here. So that could also be a big reason as to why he's not doing any damage yet. Obviously, we haven't seen him try to whip out advanced Conquerors or anything like that. Same with Luffy. So we don't exactly know how that interacts with the Lunarian or S-Hawk DNA, right? But I need to go over the King fight. Once Zoro figured out the flame on, flame off thing, it wasn't until then that he even started using Conqueror's Haki in his attacks in the first place. So we never actually saw Zoro land a Conqueror's attack on King when King had his guard up in the first place, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
So we don't... we don't technically have a baseline of how it would interact with the durability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on a little bit, we see that both S-Bear and S-Hawk are legitimately completely fine from the attacks that they've received so far. I also love how Luffy's like, they're getting up way too easily. Do they think they're Kaido or something? Cut it out already. I love that. I find it hilarious. Also, the gag here, which the chapter's named after, with Zoro being like, now that you mention it, they remind me of King, that guy who fought in Wano. And then Shaka's like, a Lunarian on Kaido's crew. I never caught what his people were called. And Shaka's like, I see, that must have been Alba, the test subject who long ago escaped Punk Hazard with Kaido. The Seraphim owe their toughness to his Lunarian blood. And I love how, like, the whole gag here is, like, Zoro's giving a detailed breakdown of their abilities with the flame on, flame off sort of thing. And everyone's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, you know, that cheers for the information, that'll help heaps. And Zoro's like, yeah, there wasn't a lot to really go on. You know, there was nothing really that could cue me into this. I mean, King only had white hair, brown skin, black wings, and flames on his back. When I say Zoro is one of the dumbest people, but smartest people, it actually hurts. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we joke about this a lot, but like, if this was Sanji, he would have just given a detailed explanation of this in like 30 seconds. If he was aware of this, wouldn't he?
Yep, for
Like,
sure.
like he would have like, 2 and 2 would have been put together as he walked into the room. Zoro, though, it's like, Zoro's whole thing is like, he can fight well, and he's got good intuition for fighting. Like, for example, when S-Hawk starts lining up Shaka, you know, Zoro's able to immediately intercept. But at the same point in time, when it comes to actually, like, breaking down what he's doing in a fight, he's got no clue. He's just slashing at shit until it works.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the panel here where you've got Shaka talking about Alba, and then on the opposing panel, you've got S-Hawk. Weirdly enough, I love the parallel side by side of King and Mihawk there, like Kid Mihawk. I don't know why, they almost look like a rowdy sibling duo. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see it.
Like, Alba's like the obnoxious bigger brother. Alba's like the littler, like, more follows the rules sort of brother, like the strict one versus the, like, ruthless one.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we continue on. Shaka says he's going to go and continue on with finding the stellar body. Zoro intercepts S-Hawk from taking out Shaka, and they continue their fight off screen. We then cut over to what I would argue is the most interesting part of this chapter, right?
Yep.
We cut over to the third floor of Building A, so the floor immediately below them. We pick up with Nami, who we remember screamed at the end of last chapter.
Yeah.
She's currently in conflict with Seraphim Jinbei. Obviously, she's weighing up whether or not she can actually hurt him or not because it's a kid and also it's Jinbei. We see that Brooke's been beheaded. We see that Edison has been taken out, or at least partially taken out. And we have Nami and Zeus. Zeus finally making an appearance this arc. Damn, for someone that's joined the crew, I've been desperate to see this guy actually do stuff. Like, I thought we would have had a lot more crew interactions with Zeus by now. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But
And it's funny because it's basically how I was saying, like, yeah, this is all Nami has to do. Literally just let Zeus out, and
Yeah.
Zeus just goes and does everything.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it's working, which is great. Because I thought it was going to be some annoying thing where, like, Nami still wants to be like, yeah, shoot out my little balls, and then Zeus goes and chases them all, and that's how he, like,
Yeah.
dashes through you and lightning attacks you. It's like, no, man, just let Zeus do his thing.
So, there's sort of 3 things I want to talk about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, first things first, we see the Thunderbolt attack where Zeus flies out of the climber baton and through, not around, through Seraphim Jinbei, right?
Yeah.
And we see it actually, like, take him out, do massive internal damage. He goes wide out in the eyes and drops down. Now, mind you, this is like important for a few reasons. One, this is Zeus, so this is actually a Yonko level attack because this is a Yonko's weapon.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
No different to how the Pacifista lasers and Frankie's lasers are the same as Kizaru's lasers. This is Big Mum's one of her main 3 attack methods. Right? So it makes a lot of sense that it's able to bypass Seraphim Jinbei, but it's actually really interesting that we get confirmation that these things, because remember, they can adapt to any environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's actually some curious things with that, because we know that there are islands exist in the New World that it's just permanently covered in lightning, right?
Yeah.
So there's a possibility here that this Seraphim's actually going to adapt to electricity and maybe evolve past it so it can't hurt him later on. Right?
Right.
Number 2, Nami looking like a G, being able to hurt this thing. This is really impressive. I love this for her. Zeus, absolute beast. But it's also crazy that Zeus is able to fly through people. Not around them, through them. No different to how Brook can with his soul abilities and freeze people. Because they're both just souls inhabiting something.
Yeah.
So essentially, all Zeus is his Big Mum haunting a cloud. Which again brings up another excellent point. With Zeus still being alive, I wonder if there's a possibility for Big Mum to come back. Even if it's through Zeus's lifeline.
I hope not. The problem with Big Mama coming back is just that she's not redeemable.
Mm-mm.
Or at least I don't think she's redeemable.
The chance for her being redeemable, I think, was long gone with Wano. If she was going to be redeemable, following the Olin storyline would have been more important back then, I think.
Yeah.
But I also have to point out here, there is a hell of a lot of potential that Seraphim Jinbei is the strongest Seraphim, but not for the reasons that a lot of people probably think. Right? Obviously, if we're to say which Seraphim's actually going to have the best combat ability, I think we'd all probably point to Mihawk or maybe the Boa one, right? For different reasons. Mihawk's one if it reaches Mihawk's potential. If not, Boa's one just because of how busted her abilities are, right? But when it comes to Jinbei, the Jinbei Seraphim lives in a really unique place to any other character and any other Seraphim. Because not only does it have Lunarian DNA, it has Fishman DNA. A race that already makes you bare minimum 10 times stronger. Right?
Yeah, that is true.
So, not only is this Seraphim potentially 10 times stronger than the other, potentially 10 times stronger than the other Seraphim at this point in time. It has a devil fruit that makes its entire environment, its natural habitat, which we know fishmen get even stronger in water, right? It has the Lunarian DNA, and I need to point out here, right? So this is a Yonko attack going through Seraphim Jinbei here, and Seraphim Jinbei continues to attack after this, right? The Seraphim Jinbei attacking after this isn't a feat because it's a Lunarian or a Seraphim. You have to remember, Jinbei got impaled through the torso by Akainu and kept going. You know what I mean?
Yes. True.
Jinbei, out of all of the warlords, arguably has the highest level of durability, tankability, and endurance.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And that very well could translate here, as well as having the Lunarian DNA on him. This could actually potentially be the hardest Lunarian to actually put down out of all the Lunarians, just based on their his physical stature.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's the best at attacking or the most broken and OP. It just means, based on what actual Jinbei is capable of, this may be the hardest one to actually finish off. This may be like the ulti of the Seraphim. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which brings us to the last point in this sequence, right? He falls through the ground. Brook picks up his head and puts his head back on, right? Nami's cowering in fear because Seraphim Jinbei is mad. He's completely recovered. He comes up over with a mad haymaker about to try and take out Nami. And Sanji does his rare fillet strike, winding the absolute shit out of Seraphim Jinbei here. right?
Yep.
Do you know why this is so insanely important?
Mm.
Look at Sanji's... So see how we have two panels of Sanji's face, right?
Yep.
Look at his eyebrow.
Okay.
His eyebrow is in the position that it's in when he is in his Germa mutated state.
Okay.
Arguably meaning that this attack here might imply that he's actually got Ifrit Janbei on. Meaning, potentially, his new power-up here, considering it is able to, like, look at what it does to their Jinbei here, right? Nami was understandable because it's not only a Yonko attack, but it also bypasses his defense by flying through him, right?
Yeah.
Go back and look at when, go back and look at what, Luffy and Lucci did against Esper and Zoro and Kaku did against, S-Hawk. Didn't win them. Which would be implying that this attack from Sanji here is stronger than what they're doing up there. Or at least has some level of durability negation. We know that it's been left on the cutting room floor for a while, but Diablo Jumbe used to have Duraneg to it. It used to actually burn people from the inside out. It actually used to, like, turn people's bones to almost as if it was on fire and burn them from the inside out. Kind of like Luffy's Red Hawk attacks. So Sanji here is looking really impressive. Although, mind you, Sanji's having to whip out seemingly a bigger power-up than the others straight off the cuff. You know what I mean?
I mean, Luffy... Oh, yeah, true. Luffy's in Gear 4. He's not in Gear 3.
Yeah.
I mean, in Gear 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So Luffy's in Gear 4, so this attack is at least being shown comparative to Gear 4.
Although, in fairness, this is, like... Essentially, let's say, I would say, even if Nami and Brook team up with Sanji to fight this Jinbei, I reckon Jinbei's got to carry that harder than like Luffy would or Zoro would, because Zoro's got Kaku with him, and Luffy has Lucci with him, and it's like a 2v1.
Yep.
Like Zeus is real powerful, but I mean, we just saw it not do really anything.
Yeah. It's able to hurt him, which is impressive. Which means Nami can hurt the... Like, Nami has a level of Duraneg. Unless someone's immune to electricity.
And, like... Yeah, and these guys seem to be particularly not. I mean, being a fishman and being, like, partly robotic, potentially, it really depends how that works.
Yeah.
It's still so confusing how that works. Because they still have the lasers. I know we've talked about this before, but they still have the lasers. Yet, as far as we can tell, they seem mostly biological.
Yeah.
But then how do they have the lasers? Because they can't have two fruits?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
So, it means, potentially, like you said, they could be super susceptible to lightning-based attacks.
Yeah.
But, on the flip side of it, Sanji here is not using lightning, and that's for sure.
I do have to say, though, Sanji's entry, although it is funny One Piece meme, was a little bit cringe. And Zoro's attacks were just classic badass. Which is like, come on, Oda, why are you doing this to a boy?
See, do you know what actually really threw me off? It felt really wrong. I actually kind of got like... I got an ick. I got a crawl on my skin. Sanji saying, I'll be your judge, jury, and executioner. I was like, get that man's name out your mouth. What? Why even use the word judge? Like, I just feel like that... I just feel like Sanji wouldn't. You know what I mean? Just on a subconscious level, he'd just be like, yeah, nah. It ain't it, fam. It ain't it, pal. You know what I mean? But...
I mean, like, if you look at like the panel of Zoro doing the Lethal Lion song,
it just looks better.
That would just look sick. And then versus like, yeah, I don't know. And then the outfits were really irking me. I kind of had like a realization this week that like Zoro's outfit is super badass and Sanji's outfit just looks silly.
I actually really like Sanji and Jinbei's outfit because they're just kind of like the dads of the group. You know what I mean? It's like they just go around just like doing their shit. Whereas Zoro is like out here being like the badass oldest son, just being like cringe. You know what I mean? Grunge and cringe. But yeah, dude, Zoro's attacks just are looking cooler here. Even like I said, I was hyping up Kaku's attacks. It was like kind of cool looking, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you had the Luffy and Lucci parallel, which was cool, definitely cool. And mind you, they did a lot more attacks, like a lot more attacks against Kuma than the other two did against S-Hawk.
Yeah.
Right? But the funny thing is, Sanji, even though his attack is the goofiest, he actually did more damage than they did.
Yeah. That's the thing. Seemingly, this fight that Sanji is a part of right now is more one-sided than Luffy's and Zoro's. Although, again, you have to be fair. Zoro right now is using a one-sword style technique with his arguably weakest blade.
Yep.
And Luffy isn't in Gear 5, and potentially you could argue not using like Conqueror's armor and stuff like that.
I would say though, if to win this fight, Sanji can do it without having any form of advanced haki, in a way that's more impressive than Luffy just going Gear 5 and winning, or Zoro whipping out advanced Conquerors and advanced armament.
That is true. Because of the potential that's still there.
Yeah, because if Sanji then unlocks it later on, it's kind of like... Because I think it's volume 100. The title of the volume, and this has been making its rounds a lot through Twitter and that. The title of the volume is Conquerors. It's where the Advanced Conquerors was released in the volume form, right? With Luffy on the rooftop and stuff like that. And the front cover is all Conquerors users except for Sanji. So a lot of people are like using that to be like, look, it hasn't happened yet, but in the volume called Conquerors, with a cover filled with all Conquerors except Sanji, it's kind of implying that at some point in time, this guy's probably going to be the next guy to unlock Conquerors. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, more so than the likes of Zoro, he comes from a lineage of actual rulership. You know what I mean? So there is genetic potential for it, is what I'm saying. And I also love that Oda's now using the eyebrow as a tell for Sanji when he's using his modified genes. Right?
Yeah, that is really good.
Because I don't know whether or not Sanji has his exoskeleton at all times now, or whether or not it's only going to be when he's using, like, when his eyebrow flips. You know what I mean? Because from here on out, it may be a matter of, like, he doesn't have any modifications, but then when his eyebrow flips, he gets all the modifications.
Yeah, okay.
So it's sort of... Because that's very Linearian, isn't it?
Dude, you know what would be an interesting way of getting around Sanji's BS about, like, not being able to fight women and stuff? Is that when his eyebrow flips, he does lose his emotions, which is what he's scared of, but it's only when his eyebrow flips and then he can always go back to normal. So, like, he doesn't like to use the power, so he'll tend to not use the power. Typical anime stuff, right? Like, you don't power up until you have to at the very end. So he'll fight, he won't use the power, and then he's like, oh, okay, now I've got to go all out. And then he uses it, and that's how he can, like, get around a lot of those annoying limitations without having to just, like, straight up write it out of his character.
Or, alternatively, even if he can control it, he just turns into his Seraphim form, and he just receives no damage from women.
Yeah, true.
Dude just turns tanky. Because it's hard. We haven't actually gotten confirmation whether or not that those modifications were permanent, but stuff like Ifrit Jambay requires his eyebrow to switch up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, based on that as well, it was only for one panel in Wano, and then it went back to normal, right? To the point where a lot of people were like, it just could have been a mistake. But Oda actually came out in the latest SBS and said, oh no, it's no mistake. That's representing the fact that his Germa genes are activating, right?
Yeah.
So his eyebrows switched, and then for a time after it switched back to normal, he had his powers activated. Which is kind of what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
His eyebrow switches, he may be in sort of, Vinsmoke mode for, say, 10, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I'd also like to point out, I feel like based on this, I can finally turn around and say, right, Sanji has something in his arsenal that can definitively hurt Doflamingo. Because unfortunately with Queen, we didn't actually have a good gauge of what Queen's health was like, or durability, or resistance was like, because he was a robot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Sanji just kicked through his metal arm like it was bloody, like, butter. Right?
Yeah.
And then when he got his... When he snapped and he did his, combination attack and beat Queen, it was kind of like, okay, Queen's a big dinosaur, but it's like we also had no... We didn't see other people attack Queen outside of Chopper and it do nothing. You know what I mean?
True.
And it's like, we saw Chopper attack Big Mom. So it's like, Queen could have been anywhere from a commander to Big Mom in terms of like how his health was. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, true.
But now seeing Sanji in these sorts of forms hurt a Seraphim, right? That's a huge buff. That is a really huge buff. That means Sanji's AP is now on a level where he would be able to at least, with confirmation, hurt King. And based on the fact that Sanji has his speed at all times, he doesn't have to choose between speed and attack, right? I could see a possible argument now in a high diff fight, Sanji beating King.
Damn. I mean, yeah, I agree, right? This is basically that feat, right?
Yeah, this was the only thing holding Sanji, holding people back from being able to say Sanji had a chance. Sanji had nothing.
In terms of, like, potency, attack damage. And then, like, you could even argue that, like, I mean, before this, you could argue that, like, Zoro, being a swordsman, specifically has potency attack damage because it's like he cuts things. Whereas being, like, a bruiser, like if Luffy didn't have Conqueror's armament, who knows if he could have even hurt King.
Mm-hmm. And do you know what the craziest thing about all that is? Like I said earlier, Zoro only got his attacks off when King had his flame off. Sanji's hurting the Seraphim Jinbei here with his flames on.
Yep.
So, whatever this... We have to see how Jinbei recovers from this, but just from the fact that he's kicking Jinbei enough to white out his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Is enough to say it's hurting him. Whereas...
Yeah, exactly. Like, he could eventually brawl him down.
Yeah.
If he kept up this pace for long enough.
So, Zoro's attacks are definitely more deadly than Sanji's. That's never going to be a contest in my mind. But Sanji's attacks may be more damaging in an overall sense at this point.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, obviously, once Zoro lands a bloody Seraphim... once Zoro lands an advanced Conqueror's Haki slash on one of these things without its flames on, right? What does he do?
Yeah.
He cut King's wing off. Like, Sanji's never going to kick someone's limb off, right?
Yeah, he's not just going to be able to kick someone in half. That's a bit gory.
But the fact that it's seeming like Sanji can damage these things in this state now, that is pretty wild to think about. That's the big thing that I've sort of been leaning against with Sanji for a long time, going, look, he just doesn't have finishing capabilities at this point, right? And even in his fight against Queen... Yeah, he finished Queen, and it was sort of like a mid-low diff when he actually started attacking. The problem with that was we didn't have a gauge of how strong Queen was. It's like Jack. Jack went out from a single projectile slash to the tummy.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like how we were talking about it, actually, where it was like, it was circular power scaling. It's like, this person fought with this person, who fought with this person, who also fought with this person, but they never fought anyone outside of those three people that we know there are limitations for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we just don't know how strong they are.
So it's like...
They're all relatively strong.
They're relative to each other, and we know who they're stronger or weaker than, roughly, but we don't know what they're actually capable of. But I love this, because this actually... Even though it's super goofy for Sanji, it still is giving him a lot of love here that he needs. But I actually would second this now and say I reckon it's going to flip up and it's going to be a really hard fight now, because you know what Sanji doesn't really have the capability to do here?
What?
Essentially, Seraphim Jinbei is Picker. Right?
In what sense that he can go into the water?
Into the stone, yeah.
Into the ground,
Into the
yeah.
ground, right? Now, if we were to put Sanji up against Pika, at any point post-time skip, I've always said Sanji would have had a better time dealing with Pika than Zoro would have because of his observation haki, right?
Right.
But Sanji is a land and aerial combatant, right? If this Seraphim Jinbei is able to swim around through the ground really easy, Sanji may have a really hard time because Sanji just may get to a point where he destroys a bit of the ground trying to get him, but this Seraphim just moves too quick in the water.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's like the same problem other people have fighting Sanji in the air, Sanji has fighting this thing in the water. And because Sanji can't enter the ground like it is water, he will be sort of limited here. And
it'd be a really cool thing. Like, this wouldn't necessarily be like a power up or anything like that. It would just be like a cool thing to think about with a fight. Of like, what if when he turns the ground into water, what if he can like sort of keep it as like a watery substance as well, and then he can like choose when to turn it off. So he can turn the water that's around him, the floor that's around him into water, and then he's swimming around in it. But Sanji can't land on that ground because he'll go into the water, and then Jinbei can turn it back into stone and like trap him to the floor. So it'd be cool if like Sanji had to like geppo around just above the water and then try to hit him from in the water. You know, it would take so much control on your air walking.
Yep. Do you know what the interesting thing about that would be? Two things to play into it. Number one, we know based on Senor Pink that he's able to drag people into the water with him.
Yeah.
Right? Number two, what you're saying would sound a lot more like an awakening. Right? He's able to turn the entire ground into water, but choose what's water and not, so stuff would sink in. We don't know how these things would handle trying to awaken their fruits. If it's possible or not. We know Vegapunk hasn't really tested it.
Yeah.
But do you know what
hey, if they want to give these things another power boost, they could always say that Vegapunk's figured out how to artificially awaken them, so he just gave them awakened fruits.
Instead of Vegapunk having to do it, why don't we just take a step back and actually look at who these people are? They're warlords.
Yeah.
They're some of the smartest and best combatants in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has an extra shot at awakening their fruit, it would be some of these guys, wouldn't it?
Yeah. The only question is, we still don't know if there's a certain amount of time you have to have your fruit for.
I would say that time constraint issue was gone when Kaku was shown to be awakened. Considering he's had his fruit for like a year and a half. Or 2 years.
Yeah, a bit over 2 years.
Yeah. Right? And it's like, it's not like a bit over 2 years and he awakened it on the second year. It's within those 2 years, he'd cleanly awakened his fruit and has used it more than once.
Yeah.
So...
like, he didn't awaken it in this fight. He awakened it previously. So it could have, been less than 2 years.
Yeah. Which kind of throws out the idea of it being how long you've been with your fruit. It probably has something more to do with how you resonate with your fruit and how skilled your body is and your mind is yourself. You know how Kaido talked about your mind and body catching up with your abilities, right? Well, you have to build yourself. You know what I mean? Kaku, being a master of the 6 powers, life returns one of the 6 power abilities, right? We already know that, like, having, like, what life return is having autonomous control over every aspect of your nervous system. Like that.
I mean, just like using like iron body is like you're able to harden your body through like will, but not haki, but kind of haki, but kind of not haki. But I don't know.
I think they've implied now that iron body is just outright haki.
Yeah, but the thing is that like it. I mean, I see it similar to paper body, right? In the sense of like it's more like control over your entire body.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's so weird.
That's the thing.
I want to see someone do iron body now and actually see their body go black.
Well, we have seen that.
Every time that we've seen iron body from recently.
Yes.
Mm.
So we never had Virgo vocalize saying it was iron body, right?
Yeah.
But we've had the likes of Lucci and Kaku and Who's Who now vocalize that it's iron body.
Okay.
Right? But paper art, like I
Oh
said,
yeah, I remember who's who.
yeah, paper body, right? Paper body, well, one of the aspects of paper body is life return, which, like I said, is full autonomous control over your nervous system and every aspect of your body. It's actually arguably the same technique that the Boa sisters use to turn their hair into weapons. Right? Because they can physically control their hair like it's another part of their body. The same way Kumadori does. From CP9. Right? So, I would argue anyone that has a mastery of life return and has a devil fruit, most likely, is either able to semi-awaken their fruit if they're a zone, or just awaken their fruit. Right? Because I feel like being a master of life return means you are up to cuff on awakening your fruit. For example, Luffy has been showing life return and was able to awaken his fruit. Yeah, it was a bit late, but I mean, it was what it was. Kid had life return in Udon. We found out he's an awakened fruit user.
Well, I would say as well, the difference is, I mean, they said that basically your body and your mind needs to be in that level, right?
Yeah.
And the whole point of CP9 is like they're literally just constantly training their body. Their whole thing is like their body. And then eventually once they have that mind aspect under control, and I think they were probably given fruits that are fairly similar to their personality with the intention of them awakening, and they're especially given like zones, which seemingly, I mean, maybe except for mythical zones, seemingly seem like the most common to awaken. And like it basically seems like the whole organization is intending to train them so that they are able to awaken their fruits.
I feel like the point of the six powers, because we got introduced to the six powers as if it was a part of just CP9, but we also found out later that it's a part of the Marines training, right?
Yes.
To the point that captains, right? Captains
Yeah.
that are showing promise are already being trained in Rokushiki.
Yeah.
So we've got people like Kobe and Toshigi, who, when they were captains, right?
Yeah.
Had already learnt things like shave and stuff like that, or skywalk.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive, right?
It honestly seems to me like a course on how to learn how to use haki.
Yes.
Like a really efficient way of how to learn how to use haki. Whereas the way that like Luffy and most like pirates learn it is just like
Brutal.
just harden up, bro.
Yeah.
And just use like sheer will, which is a lot more of a random way where you just sort of have to happen upon the right mindset in order to do it.
That's why I have a lot of fear on the horizon for the world government, because I've looked at this for a long time and I've been like, they are a well-oiled machine when it comes to producing quality in quantity, right? So they've got things like the six powers, but we know that there are multiple techniques of the six powers and that there are multiple ways that they can advance the six powers past the basic teachings, right?
Yeah.
So you've got people like Who's Who can do the Fang pistol. That was a unique ability to him as far as we know. You know what I mean? You got things like the Rikogu gun, which is Rob Lucci's go-to, which is a combination ability of all the six powers, apparently, which he can do even better stuff with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Looking at the Marines, best example, in Impel Down right now, we have 5 Awakened Zone users, but they're Awakened Zone users that didn't have their consciousness. Right?
Yeah.
They lost themselves. So do you know what that actually kind of implies to me? In a weird way?
Mm-hmm.
Notice how many other zones they have. They've got people like Onigumo, who's a spider zone. They've got people like Dalmatian, who's a dog zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I look at it and I see those 5 in Impel Down and I just go, I bet they're the people that were learning 6 powers that awakened their fruit and failed at controlling it, and they just get sent to Sadie, who can control animals by training them. And that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Which also implies that there's probably a fair few others that succeeded. That are probably in the Vice Admiral sort of range.
It's almost like the world government / Navy are doing a version of what Kaido was doing with the smiles.
But just successfully.
Yeah.
Like, even their failures...
they find useful.
Yes.
They don't just turn into smiling, laughing people.
Yes, and mind you, those jail beast prisoners, right? Yeah, they were getting one shot by the likes of Gear 3, pre-time skip Jinbei and Crocodile and Ivankov. But, they were getting back up within like 10 minutes and continuing to fight.
Yep.
So if you didn't have people of that caliber there to put these things down and keep putting them down, you got to think about how detrimental these are going to be to other people.
Like a weakened, malnourished prisoner who's broken out of their cell, but they still have sea stone cuffs on, are not going to get past those things.
Even if these things were unleashed on an actual battlefield, right? I'm sorry, they're taking out a lot of gifters. Like one of those things is like mowing down gifters.
Yeah. Well, we know how much of a disappointment gifters turned into,
but
despite their hype in Zoe.
But that
Do you
same...
remember? I still remember you hyping them up in Zoe, talking about how like they can turn any body part that they want into like a fruit, into like you punch, and then suddenly your fist is a wolf's mouth.
That's how they were originally shown.
Talking about, and then we're talking about them potentially being able to make a wolf's mouth come out of your hand and then hark you up the teeth and then bite you, and like, it was going to be cool.
That is actually what I would say is the biggest potential plot failure in One Piece. Right?
Yeah.
Not how they were handled, but how they evolved after their first showcasing. Because when they were first shown, they weren't permanently disfigured. Jack's initial gifters transformed into zones, like a regular devil fruit. They weren't always in a zone form, right? Like, I remember you had Sheep's Head. Remember that dude?
Yeah.
Used to be able to turn his, like, forearms into the sheep's horns and stuff like that. And that would have been a whole different aspect of why artificial zones were more impressive than real zones. Because it's like, with a real zone, you can only turn your body part into the part of the animal. Whereas with an artificial zone, it was going to be like, you could turn it into any part of any part of the animal that you got. So it's like...
Yeah.
You know, you want to turn your arm into a leg to get an extra strong, like, kick punch, do it. Or turn it into a mouth to bite, do it. Whereas, what ended up happening was just some discount Looney Tunes shit.
Absolutely ridiculous. And the thing is that, like, in Zoe, when they show that off, that to me is like, okay, this is what Oda's, like, original idea of what this would be, right?
Yeah.
And then he kind of just, like, I guess, like, changed his mind. Which is weird to me because he talks about how he's been planning Wano for so long, and then he just, I don't know.
See, I think he had to do a heap of... I think there was a lot of stuff he wanted to do for Wano that he had to cut. And I'm going to be completely bluntly honest here. I think the editors, the last 2-3 editors he had, because they're younger than him, they haven't had the confidence to actually call him out and say stuff is bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Dressrosa, objectively in bulk, is a good arc, but it also has a lot of really bad moments that could have been time managed and dealt a lot better. Right?
Yeah, the pacing was a bit crazy.
The thing with that, though, is the likes of Doflamingo was originally going to be in Wano. Right? So when Oda was originally like, oh my god, I can't wait for Wano, Wano's going to be amazing. It's like, yeah, because you were envisioning it with these awesome Devil Fruit users in a huge swarm, making everyone have cool, awesome fights. With Doflamingo reigning is an awesome power. And then what ended up happening, you're like, shit, it's actually going to be too good and too hard for the guys to handle without it being wrong. I'm going to have to separate the plot lines up and move them away from each other. And I'm going to have to break this down and isolate it a bit more. Right?
Yeah.
Like, even in the likes of Wano itself, it's like, I feel like Oda even said, originally he wasn't planning for a lot of the Supernova to still be alive post-time skip, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of like, him having given them as much screen time as they have, for us, it was like, oh my god, yes, we're finally getting to see them, but at the same point in time, it's kind of like, I feel like some of those plot lines and those people that we maybe were originally going to focus on were cut for the small bits we had with them. Because the fans actually, like, resonated with them a lot more than he was expecting. You know what I mean? Like, the initial Kid Apu Hawkins alliance, right? Would have made a lot of
Yeah.
sense if Apu and Hawkins were killed in that conflict. You know what I mean? And their stories could have potentially have just ended there.
That's true, actually. Yeah, they didn't have to bring them in.
Yeah. Whereas when he was getting to it, he was sort of like, do you know what? I can do more with these characters, tell a little bit more of them. And I think what ended up happening is he got a few too many ingredients and was like, "Ugh, I probably shouldn't include this. I probably shouldn't do that. That won't mix as well with that." And I think the problem with that is Wano was too long to be that short. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, Wano should have been an extra 3 volumes, I think. An extra 30 chapters could have made a world of difference. Right? You give me 1 chapter each of not all, but say half of the Topiropo and either Jack, King or Queen, one of the All-Stars, right?
Yeah.
Coming back as Awakened and make that a volume, right? And it's like, oh shit, we thought we beat them, but they're coming back. And then overwhelm them. That would have made a world of difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you had to give it 1 more volume of fleshing out the Kid Pirates, the Law Pirate, like the Heart Pirates, and the Samurai of Wano, and actually how they were interacting a bit more with the actual Beast Pirates. And you know how we had some Beast Pirates that were betrayed by Queen, and we were like, oh my god, what are we doing? We could have had some really emotional stuff where we had some Beast Pirates deserting and being like, can we join you? And maybe that was an actual hard conflict for the Samurai where they're like, you guys have like tortured us for years. Why should we let you join our ranks? You know what I mean? They could have...
Because let's say, like, in reality, something like this, an event like what Wano is, it would just be so messy.
Yes.
Like, there's no way for it to not be just horrible.
And then give me a final volume or half a volume, right? Like a couple of chapters after that Bajrang gun, right? Right at the end of it, you have Kaido reach up from that hole like he did against Kid, Law, and Hawkins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And drag himself up. He can't see a thing. He's covered in blood. That attack killed him essentially, and he's just a dead body standing.
Mm-hmm.
And he literally just needs a final tap to go down. That could have been a lot more impactful, in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the way it went out, look, I'm not going to lie, the Bashram gun was awesome. It was impressive, and the way Kaido went down, it was kind of like, it was fitting in a way, but at the same point in time, it's kind of like...
Do you think that Kaido should have had a Whitebeard-esque final moment?
Funnily enough, I've actually been, for a video, I've actually been writing a Kaido-esque ending, right? Actually, I might read some of it off because I've got it up here, okay?
Because I think it's like when you think about it, it's like Kaido is like a super legendary pirate. He's like this great warrior and everything, but at the same time, he's no Whitebeard.
So,
and you know, I would also kind of accept the argument of like only Whitebeard should get that treatment, and if you give it to Kaido, it kind of weakens Whitebeard's.
So I'll read this off to you, right? Because this is I've made so far 6, but I was trying to aim for about 8 to 10 panels for this, right? Where I've retaken scenes from the series, edited it up, chopped it up, because I feel like the reason why Kaido didn't have it is actually the main like I feel like Kaido's purpose in the story was to not go down like Whitebeard when he wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think almost the same with Big Mom. Big Mom and Kaido aren't Roger. They're not Whitebeard.
They don't smile as they die.
Yeah, they don't. They may do everything almost the exact same. You know, be on the same stature, the same fear level, the same combat level. but it's how they carry themselves that ultimately fails them, right?
Mhm.
And so I feel like the point of Kaido in reflection was to be disappointing. I feel like the point of it was you almost wanted it to be like a Whitebeard-esque death, and then you realize him not getting that was robbing him of his dream, because if he got that, Kaido won. His whole thing was he wanted to die a glorious death, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we weren't about to give him a victory, even if it was in a loss.
Yeah, right.
Right? But hear this, right? So, are you familiar? I can pull it up if you want. Are you familiar with the Whitebeard speech when Whitebeard passed?
Yep.
Do you remember it really well or not?
Not word for word,
Okay.
but reasonably well.
I'll pull this up and I'll read this off. I know some of the translations are a bit scrappy. I should probably just find it on the Viz. I had it up recently. I can't remember what it was though. I'll try here. Oh, I've been going through so much stuff. Trying to do too many videos at once and not finishing any of them at the moment. Where are we? Oh, come on. Where is One Piece? Oh, what chapter did Whitebeard go down? Was it 578? I want to say. Does that sound about right to you? 578?
I've got no idea. I think the only time that I've actually read Marineford was I just Googled it, and I got like a edited version of like it was like basically one chapter, but it was the whole of Marineford in one chapter kind of thing.
578 is the last chapter of Marineford. So I was close to it. Let's go 574. Oh, okay. 74 is Ace, which would make 75 the Silent Rage. So let's go 76. God, Marineford didn't last long after Whitebeard went down.
Nope.
Like, at all. Okay, you ready? So this is the Whitebeard speech, right? Whitebeard is dead. Even in death, even with half of his face gone, he would never fall. He will forever be remembered as a monster for the way he destroyed his enemies that day. In this one battle alone, he suffered 267 sword wounds, was struck by 152 bullets, and 46 cannons. And yet, neither that mighty body nor his pirate's pride suffered even one coward's wound. And then at the beginning of the next chapter, you get a bit more detail on him, where it says, in the blink of an eye, the news spread throughout the whole world. The Whitebeard pirates had failed to save Roger, son of Ace, and lost their captain Whitebeard. The great historical event will be spoken of for generations to come, but to those who witnessed it with their own eyes, could only stare in silence. At the age of 72, this man, Edward Newgate, the equal of even the Pirate King, the greatest captain of the Whitebeard pirates, known himself as Whitebeard, died in battle at the Bay of Marineford. There he led his crew against the combined forces of the Navy headquarters and the 7 warlords of the sea, and after an epic struggle, breathed his last. So that's the rundown they give for Whitebeard, right?
Yeah.
So for Kaido's one, I reincorporated his introduction. Okay? So
yeah.
I'll send you the manga panels sometime if you want. So this is what I came up with for Kaido. The man claimed he was searching for a place to die. To speak on this man, he had tasted defeat as a pirate on 7 different occasions, and had been caught by the Navy in enemy ships no less than 18 times. He was tortured time and time again and lived as a prisoner. To repeat, this man who challenged the Navy in the 4 Emperors and was caught 18 times and endured over 1,000 types of torture. He was sentenced to death 40 times. When he was hung, the rope snapped. When put under the guillotine, the blade cracked. When skewered, the spear broke. Ultimately, he sank 9 different prison vessels, meaning none of these people were able to kill him, and that included himself. His hobby was suicide. His name was Kaido. Kaido, King of the Beasts. People say in a one-on-one fight, always bet on Kaido. Land, sea, and air. Out of every living thing in this world, this pirate is said to be the strongest creature alive. Kaido is dead. The strong live, and the weak die. Even in death, he was feared. He was struck down and fell through the earth and into the depths of hell. He will not be remembered. In his final battle alone, he suffered 18 sword wounds, was shot 3 times, had his own attack returned to himself twice, was crushed alive 6 times, had his body and internal organs damaged and ruptured a total of 11 times, struck no less than 90 separate times. To specify, his tough skin was stabbed 8 times and cut 10. Bullets pierced his hide 3 times. He was crushed and compacted 6 times. From inside his own body, he was struck 8 times. The organs in his chest and throat ruptured without remorse 3 times. And finally, of the 90 strikes to his person, 35 included blows that destroyed one's body from the inside out. 4 were coated in the color of the Supreme King's haki, and another 49 a combination of the both, until finally, a strike the size of an island, covered in the color of arms and the Supreme King, struck this man from the heavens, through 35 kilometers of the earth, under the sea, and finally perished in the depths of hell. And finally, of the 90 strikes to his person... No, sorry, I read that part the wrong way around. Yeah, I had a bit more to it, but it's in script form at the moment. So those are the panels I've done at the moment. And I did a huge run through of all the stuff. I'll send it through to you if you want. I'll put it in the Discord, actually.
Cool.
This is a draft so far. Where's the Discord? I'll put it in the general for the moment. I was looking at the Kaido bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But yeah, I feel like with a rundown like that, I would have preferred it more, even if it was a rundown of how he wasn't going to be remembered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because to me, I was like, he's of that same caliber as Whitebeard. We almost deserve that same grandiose ending to it for us to feel vindicated. But I also understand at the same point in time that in doing that, what that actually does is it actually gives him the final victory in a weird way. And if that were to happen, it would kind of make Wano feel almost as nothing was worthwhile happening there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess also, like, if you're going to give it to Kaido, you also sort of should give it to Big Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to give it to Big Mom and Kaido, then it's like, okay, well, now it's done twice in the same arc. And at that point, it's like, just leave it for Whitebeard, because he was, like, such a legend.
Or
have him as, like, the only one who gets that treatment.
Or,
although, like, the thing is, when I was thinking about the speech, I was actually thinking about Whitebeard's grand speech about the One Piece being real at the end. I wasn't even thinking about the narration breakdown.
I feel like for the Whitebeard speech, we will get the same equivalent with Kaido going, the person that was going to beat me is Joy Boy.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because that was his big thing that he was talking about. The only person that was going to be able to beat him is Joy Boy.
Yeah.
That being said as well, I actually went through. So if you look at those things, that tally of attacks, I counted every panel. I have a folder now of every single panel of Kaido in the story. Right? This is every single attack. I took the time to individually count each type of attack he received. right?
That is too much work.
Yeah, it did take a bit of work, but mind you, where is it? You got the rundown now. What is it? He only so throughout Wano, right? He specifically was stabbed 8 times, cut 10 times, shot 3 times, Kid crushed him 6 times, and Law crushed him once actually. He was struck from the inside out. So that part where I said he was struck from the inside his own body, that's when Luffy goes inside him in Gear 5 and punches him from the inside out. And then you have the organs that were destroyed is from Law's Gamma Knife attack, Counter Shock attack, and Killer's Scythosonic attack. Right? And then Luffy only punched this man 90 times.
Yeah.
So
a lot of their combat was just them clashing, right?
Yeah, there was this. I actually also I have a separate tally written up of how many times they actually physically clashed and didn't hurt each other, right?
Yeah.
And this rundown also includes Yamato hitting him and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's every injury he received during that conflict. But mind you, the caliber of injuries he's receiving is from like Luffy with advanced forms of Haki. But one thing I did notice is there is actually a few times where I could, like, the advanced armament Haki isn't always shown the same way, in some regards. Like, you know the red rock gun where he punches Kaido in the face and it hurts him from the inside out?
Yeah.
He makes physical contact with Kaido, whereas when he's using it in other times, he doesn't make physical contact at all. You've just got that, like, blast effect. You know what I mean?
Right.
Still, it's interesting nonetheless. That being said, that was a huge ass tangent. We've still got to finish this chapter off. So we get to the second half here. We got Lilith and her fat ass dumpy. Oh yeah, the bubble gun. Sorry. Versing Boa, we see that just even a slight graze is enough to completely nullify these seraphim, right? Like I was saying, if these are actually what the same shields are made out of that the pacifistas have, this could be a really crazy thing for them to have. And I would be really interested to see how the likes of something like this would actually interact with, say, Bartolomeo's barrier. Because imagine if Barto puts up a barrier and there's a scene of one of the new pacifistas putting up their bubble shield and it's like merging 2 bubbles. Right?
Yeah.
But the Sea Stone one essentially allows them to just like get in through his bubble shield. That would be pretty crazy.
Yeah, it would.
But yeah, we also get a bit of confirmation here, which makes a few other characters sort of a little less creepy. Considering Boa is able to turn people to stone of any strong emotion, which also confirms what has been said in SBS about Boa's fruit. So any strong emotion can activate this fruit. It doesn't have to just be sexual lust or desire. Right? Any strong emotion.
When you say any strong emotion, are you saying anger and stuff?
I would say potentially. I'm not 100% sure on this because there is a... Okay. They find her cute. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think she's basically playing up her cuteness.
Yes. So she plays up her cuteness, and they're like, "Oh my god, she's so cute," and they can turn to stone, right?
Yeah.
How would this fruit go in the likes of Blackbeard's hands? Right? We knew he was interested in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If Blackbeard ate this fruit, right? Would this be one of those situations where he would be like? He'd be trying to use the abilities and the abilities just don't work for him? Or could, say, him, like... You know how Kaido does the flirtatious kiss? Blackbeard tries something like that and people are so disgusted they turn to stone.
Right.
You see where I'm getting at there?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think Oda said in an SBS once that it's strong emotions that make you susceptible to the fruit. But, like, by saying strong emotions, it wasn't specifying whether or not it was, like, specifically a special type of emotion or not. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
this sort of implies that there's more than one type of emotion that you can fall for. Although it may be a positive emotion that you have to feel, right? There's no guarantee what type of emotion it is yet. We just sort of need to see how it plays out first. Because, for example, right, when Frankie first dives on her, she kicks Frankie in the face, in the chin. But Frankie doesn't turn to stone, does he? So
No, but he turns half to stone.
Not straight away. So she kicks him in the face, in the chin, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't turn to stone at all from that first kick. Maybe she wasn't using her abilities, right? Or maybe he wasn't feeling any strong emotion to her yet. Right?
Oh, that kick.
Yes. And then under that, he hurts her, she cutes him, she kicks him, turns him to stone.
She kicks him.
Yeah. But mind you, she specified that she was using a technique later on, and it's kind of hard to say because she might actually have to use techniques since she's got the special shoes on for Egghead. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas when Boa kicks people, she's normally kicking with her leg. You know what I mean? So we've seen her turn inanimate objects and people and things to stone off a kick whenever she wants without it being a named attack. Right? Whereas here, we clearly see that it does a kick, doesn't turn Frankie to stone, but maybe that's because it was her boots that actually kicked Frankie. And then when she does the perfume female, she does a named attack, and part of the attack is that her leg is touching him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know it's like, it may be like unnecessarily complicated to go into it, but it's kind of like, there's a little bit of iffiness with it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit. Yeah, it's definitely a bit iffy.
That being said, I can't tell here. Is she flying with her wings? And is that what she's doing? She's just flying through them all now, like an actual like seraphim. Because she's flying through, dodging all the bubbles, and then she winks at them. They go, "Oh, she's so cute," and she turns them all to stone immediately.
Oh man, it's so hard to see it to tell if that's flying or not. Hey.
Because the bubbles are up in the air.
Yeah, but it could just be like a front flip.
Yeah.
Like a dive forward or something. But it could also be flying.
But then underneath where she winks, it looks like she's up in the air, and then she's turning them to stone from up in the air. But is that just her jumping up, winking, and turning them to stone? You know what I mean? Like, because we know that the likes of King could fly, but we never saw King fly with his normal Lunarian wings.
Mm-hmm.
We only ever saw him when he was flying using his devil fruit, didn't we?
Yeah, true.
Anyway, we cut to the final scene of this chapter. I'm almost over. Like, I love the whole mystery of this arc, but I'm almost over it. Like, I feel like I just want to get this... Within the next 2 chapters, I want this to be revealed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We get to the underground Old Devil Fruit Lab, which is under all the other locations. We see Stella, who's found... we see... Not Stella, it's... Shaka, who's seen Stella, comes down to help and gets shot through the head and seemingly dies, and we again hear the mysterious katok, katok, katok sound effect. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think this is? Do you have any more ideas on this? Because rereading parts of the story, I have so many different possibilities for this at this point. Like,
I've heard people tossing around S Flamingo.
Yeah, S Mingo. That makes sense.
Yeah.
With the high heels and that, and we know that Doflamingo is used to using guns. We saw him shoot his brother. We saw him shoot Law. He's not afraid to pull out a Glock, right?
He's very manipulative and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm gonna throw some possibilities out for you here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it may even be this chapter if we go back right up to the top, potentially. Okay, no, it's not in this chapter that we see it. We have seen it in the past, though, that when the Stellar walks, that Katok sound effect happens. Right? Sorry,
And
not
the Stella War.
not the Stellar. Sorry, when Shaka walks, the Daft Punk looking dude,
Yeah, right.
which could imply that any of those boots make that sound effect, and we just don't
Yeah.
always hear it. Right?
And we were last time talking about it possibly being Shaka.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out some crazy theories here. A couple of them, right? Because at this point in time, I know for a fact they've been hiding who the possible traitor... Like, they've been doing a really good job at hiding who it is and giving everyone an alibi, because I think it's actually meant to just be like a genuine... Like, you can't 100% guess it, but it's supposed to be a shock, right?
Yeah.
So, theory number one, it's Edison, the Vegapunk that was seemingly totaled with Nami and that, right? Reason for that is we know that all the other Vegapunks are able to how do I put this? We know that all the other Vegapunks are able to change body parts out to heal, right?
Yeah.
Like we saw Lilith do it and stuff like that, and they're all seemingly cyborgs, right? We see
Right.
Edison in this chapter, and Edison's just like a little Stewie Griffin robot on the ground face down, right?
Yeah.
I've seen people bring up the idea that this arc actually parallels Little Garden, with instead of so essentially you've got the land of the future and the land of the past paralleling each other, right?
Right.
In both situations, Mr. 3 is in the shadows, who we haven't been introduced to properly, tampering with shit.
Yes.
Right? I could see that being a potentially really funny callback. Right? Instead of...
As in, you think this is actually Mr. 3?
Well, not Mr. 3, it would be Vegapunk number 3, Edison.
Right.
Who's just playing things up. Another possibility is it's any of the Vegapunks. We have no idea. We know that there's such thing as hard holograms in this arc, right? Because we've seen it. Meaning any of the Vegapunks that have an alibi might not have an alibi because they've got a hologram that's actually filling in for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it may just be an impossible to guess misdirect. Right?
Yeah.
Now we get into some crazier territory. We've got the Doflamingo or S Flamingo, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it was S Flamingo, do you know what would actually make a lot of sense?
What?
It's not just S Flamingo, it's S Flamingo, S Crocodile, and S Gecko, the 3 villainous seraphims. Right?
Okay.
Because they were the only warlords that were antagonists to the Straw Hats.
Right.
What's the hierarchy of the control chips? Who's at the top?
The Gorosei.
The Gorosei. What if we were misdirected? What if it's not the Gorosei that are at the top, but the Celestial Dragons?
Right.
Because the Gorosei are Celestial Dragons, right?
Yeah.
Which of the Seraphim is also a Celestial Dragon?
Doflamingo.
What if he could potentially break his own orders and give orders to the other Seraphim?
Yeah, that would be wild.
And it's just a Frankenstein thing that Vegapunk didn't know he was a Celestial Dragon in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's not something that he could ever have planned for. So there could have always been that one. And how much of an evil maniacal manipulator is Doflamingo?
Yeah, crazy. Terrible.
Now team him up and make him in charge of Crocodile and Moria. Do you know what's funny about that? In Marineford, who did Doflamingo ask to join his crew? Crocodile.
Yeah.
And Marineford ended with Doflamingo being sent to execute Morio because he was too weak. Now we would
True.
finally have a stronger version of all three of those characters potentially being led by Doflamingo. That is wild theory number 1. Right?
Okay.
And do you know what that actually also covers?
What?
The mysterious shadow figure taking out the transponder snails. Because it would be Seraphim Gecko using the Shadow ability to send his shadow out to destroy the cameras. And that's why it's in silhouette.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And the shadow would appear, destroy a camera, and then disappear. So that's why once the camera's destroyed, in the mist you never see it. And the Katok would just be Seraphim Flamingo walking around. Nearby to the shadow.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a double misdirect there. That would be really interesting, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Option number 2 is we go down the path of people that make katok noises when they walk. Right? Notable ones are Saturn himself, which fits because we know that the what is it? We know that Saturn's on the way here, the Gorosei here, and we know that shadowy figure really resembled Saturn, right?
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. It's Saturn with his walking stick. Okay, could work.
Mm-hmm.
Option number 2, which personally I don't really buy into, but again, we're just going along with the noises of the katok, right?
Yeah.
Fujitora makes that noise because of his walking stick. Or his
Yeah.
sword. It wouldn't make a lot of sense for Fujitora to be here killing these people. It would be kind of messed up, right? But it is possible that he was sent here, and since his ability is gravity can manipulate time, right? So they could have Fujitora here somewhat manipulating the gravity around the area and the time for this fleet to get here quicker. And he was sent here as an advanced guard as part of the operation to take out Vegapunk. Personally, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Right?
Yeah.
Up next, another person that makes a katok noise, and I sent you this photo the other day, Im. Im is also above the Gorosei. Right?
Yeah.
Im needs to be introduced visually at some point in the story and be menacing in some capacity, right? What if Im has a capacity to either be in 2 places at once, essentially being able to send out like a messenger version of themselves, or even if Im's here, somewhat undercover in a regard, right? Because, yeah, we saw Im at Marijua, but also we don't know if Im has ever left Marijua and moves around and does stuff on their own. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
We don't have anything to go on with them. But if you go look at chapter 907 and 909, I think, or 907 to 909, that's when Im's introduced. And every time Im walks, you hear the katok, katok, katok. Right? It's also really interesting that at the end here, Shaka has no idea who this person is. The Stella has no idea who this person is. Right?
Yeah.
Shaka, Stella, this is where you were. Who could have done this? I'm so glad you're okay. Say, Shaka, who's that you brought with you? Bang.
Yeah.
Which would imply whoever it is someone that the Stella either can't see or doesn't know who they are. Right?
Yeah.
Well, Stella's seen all the Gorosei and all the Seraphim, so you'd scratch them off. Shaka would also be aware of all the scientists on the island, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So it would have to be someone odd. Someone potentially like Im, who can go to any government facility we don't know Im's abilities, so we don't know what they've been doing in their own capacity. You know what I mean?
True.
Again, though, doesn't... There's a few holes in it. It would just be one of those weird out there theories, right?
Yeah.
Another weird out there theory, and this is actually playing into the fact that this is the last time we saw this person relevant in the story, right? Who's a character that makes a katok noise that was last seen at one of Vegapunk's labs, that if people knew of their existence at the moment would be under threat, but also would have knowledge and access to marine bases?
That's a lot of qualifiers.
What if I told you one 5-letter name fits that build, and they could even have an emotional link with someone in this arc?
Judge.
Virgo. The katok noise is what Virgo's stick makes, even when it's not touching the ground. His bamboo stick. Virgo was last seen on Punk Hazard, right? Seemingly left totaled by law. If he survived and escaped and was able to put himself back together, he would have to hide out on a marine base, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
We also know that Punk Hazard was about 2 months ago. How long have these disappearances been going on for?
True.
About 2 months, right? Because from Dressrosa to Zoe to Whole Cake to Wano, and then to here, was over 1 month, 2 to 2 months, right?
Yeah.
He could be here and allying himself in some capacity with maybe S Flamingo, because he would be aware of it as a Marine, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of weird possibilities for who this could be, and I think the problem is, like I said, if it's going to be one of the Vegapunks, because the biggest plot twist they've put in here is Vegapunk. None of the Vegapunks can tell the Seraphim to stop. Meaning it's someone on the Vegapunk's level or above in the hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
Or, if it's not someone on their level or above, it could be someone that's manipulated with their memories in some capacity, or like, because this arc is set up like a sort of like a classic thriller in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a murder mystery sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a murder mystery thriller, right? There's a lot of different ways murder mysteries can play out. You can have, like, there's plenty of murder mystery stories that it's like your perception of memory was being changed the entire time. Like, if you had someone here with, like, a copy of, like, Pudding's fruit, right?
Yeah.
You could get to the point where we're introduced to the villain and we're like, what? That makes no sense. And then it turns out every scene we've seen up until now, they've been present. They've just cut themselves out of people's memory.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crazy stuff that could happen here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they keep emphasizing that katot noise, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a problem with that as well. So look at the last panel, right? This is something that irks me here. So right down the bottom, yeah?
Yeah.
You see the stairwell. Yeah?
Yes.
So you hear there's 2 katots on that page, and then the last panel's the katot with Vegapunk looking on in shock. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. The first katot above it is obviously the next floor up. Is that smoke coming off the gun?
Where? Above the first katot?
Yes.
No, I just thought that was like shading from
See?
it being like a corner.
See, it's possible. Oh, sorry, okay. So, sorry. See where the katot is? You follow it up. To the left of it very slightly, there's the hard dark, which is the bottom of that set of stairs, yeah?
Yeah.
And then there's a light bit of grey, which looks like it's the handrail for that set of stairs. And then sort of above the V cutout on that stairs is sort of like a white bit of stuff. That's what I'm saying is potentially the smoke.
Above the V cutout.
Yeah, so if you look at the stairs go upper floor, straight across,
Yeah.
upper floor, straight across, upper floor. Right?
Yes.
At that top up bit, right on the corner of this stretch that goes across, right near the corner, it looks like there's a billowable white smoke. But at the same point in time, I hear the catot there, but then the next catot almost seems like there's someone walking down that next flight of stairs down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's there's a possibility there that that's not smoke. Like, there's a possibility there that that's smoke and there's someone up there in silhouette that only he can see and we can't see. There's a possibility there that someone's invisible walking down these stairs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Obviously, whenever invisibility is brought up, there's also the possibility of it being, what's his name? Shiryu. Right? Another thing to point out is, for all the same reasons that I was talking about Doflamingo potentially being the bad guy, especially with all the ways that the Shadow Fruit works for, like, all the ways that the Shadow Fruit works, right? In those silhouettes. We also know that the real life Moria was last seen with the Blackbeard crew and we don't know his fate. Right?
Yeah.
There's always a possibility that we've had an infiltration here from the Blackbeard pirates, led by Shiryu, to kidnap Vegapunk.
Okay.
In which case, the weird things happening could be different members of the Blackbeard pirates sent in like a 2-man squad to go pick it up. For example, that silhouette, I would say, if you were going to try and name a specific member of the Blackbeard pirates, right? I feel like you could say it was Avalo Pizarro.
Yep.
If you remember what he looks like, right?
Yeah.
The Corrupt King, because he's got that same, like, in silhouette form, he would have that same sort of hair look as the black, like, the outline that we saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
And he'd also have that sort of big predominant nose. The only thing that you couldn't really say that he had was the mustache in the silhouette, but at the same point in time, because it's a silhouette, you couldn't really see the mustache. We also don't know what his devil fruit is. But he was present when Moria got taken out, so it is possible that he got Moria's fruit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. And it would work well for it as well.
And the thing about that
King of the Dead.
King of the Dead, right? The Corrupt King, using his subjects to go fight his wars for him. The other crazy thing about that is, you know how I listed all that information that was interesting for it to be Virgo?
Yeah.
Does that not all apply as well to Shiryu? A former world government employee?
True.
He'd be aware of facilities, most likely aware of certain protocols and stuff for them, especially being a jailer, right? A lot of people might be like, oh, why would he, be there for a jailer? But, I mean, if the pacifistas and stuff like that were being tested and stuff like that, pre-time skip, which we saw they were, right? They would probably have to deal with the pacifistas having caught people and dragging people in. So they'd probably have a connection with some of the science division.
True.
And their testing of their different technologies, wouldn't they?
Yep, true.
So there's a lot of different ways we can connect this. But the problem is, I can't tell if this is one of those mysteries that's very obvious. Like I said, it could be as simple as it's one of the Vegapunks, and the one that we've been following with the crew is just a hologram.
Yeah.
In which case, the most
it could be anything.
It could be anything. It's the perfect form of misdirect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it also makes a lot of sense if it's none of the Vegapunks, and they're all pointing fingers at each other like, who is it? What is it? Why? Right? Because you know what would be really interesting here as well? Who did we see in the Blackbeard Pirates fighting Law?
Who do we see on the Blackbeard Pirates fighting Law?
Yes.
Warp Warp Guy, Muscle Man, and Disease Man.
And our Kiji and Blackbeard himself.
Oh yeah, in the ship, yeah.
So that's 5. Right?
Yep.
We're missing the likes of Shiryu. We're missing the likes of Lafitte, the guy that can infiltrate anywhere really easily, including a room with the freaking Fleet Admiral and the world's greatest swordsman. 5 Vice Admirals and a Warlord, right? We also have Katarina Devon, who can turn into anyone and walk freely unabated on any island.
Yep.
Valero Pizarro, who we haven't seen, and whoever the 10th Titanic captain potentially could be as well. This could be like a good introduction to see who the 10th Titanic captain is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It may not make any sense for them to be here, or it may make perfect sense for them to be here, where it's just like, if the Straw Hats are going to get blamed for this and chased for this, but they can get Vegapunk themselves, that would be a huge buff for the Blackbeard Pirates, but it would also be a big thing where the Straw Hat Pirates now have a reason to go after the Blackbeard Pirates directly at the moment.
True.
Right? Because with all these wars going on, there's another really important thing we have to ask ourselves, right? What arc comes after this? If this is a relatively short arc, what arc comes next?
Blackbeard.
You reckon we go to Blackbeard before we go to Shanks?
I don't know. I don't know how that's all going to end out.
Exactly. It makes it hard, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of reasons for us to go to Elbaf. For example, the see Saul and the Library of Aharis remnants and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And it'd be a great place for Vegapunk to hide. But then, are we going to take Vegapunk to one island and then dump him straight away? Or, in typical Oda fashion, will we have him for a little bit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he
like
gets...
if this is truly going to be a saga,
yeah,
then I'm probably going to hold on to him for a bit.
So maybe he gets kidnapped. We go do a rescue arc against Blackbeard, right? And maybe the extra cherry on top there is, what has Blackbeard got in captivity? He's got Pudding, technically Sanji's wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got Kobe, Luffy and Zoro's friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we get there, he may have not only a defeated Law, who's a friend of all the Straw Hats, but also Garp.
Yeah.
He may have wrapped up a few bodies that would specifically anger the Straw Hats and their full wrath. Would he not?
Big true, yeah.
So it may be an almost perfect time for us to go deal with him, especially since Blackbeard sits at a really interesting point still, where he, although he's a Yonko and has been a Yonko longer than Luffy, he still sort of is a proto-Yonko, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because...
I mean, it's hard because, like, Shanks has got that rep.
Yep.
Whereas, and then Big Mom and Kaido have just been a Yonko for so long that they're obviously solid Yonkos by now.
Yep.
Blackbeard and Luffy are new to it, right?
Yep.
So it could be, you know, like even if they are as strong as, like, even if both of them are as strong as or stronger than Kaido, you know, it could just be that they're not like there strong enough to like weather the storm. You know, like,
Yep.
Is someone really like a champion of a gladiator arena if they come in, win a whole bunch of bouts, and then bite off more they can chew and then die really quickly?
Yep.
Like the champion is the dude that's been there for 10 years and has never lost.
Yep. For example, right? Law tagged Blackbeard pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It took a lot more diversion for Law to tag Kaido. Right?
Sure.
And Kaido also never dodged. Right? He took a lot of those attacks head on, or he would counterattack. And like Blackbeard, I'm really impressed with the way Blackbeard handled getting awakening lore attacks. Like specifically, you got to think Blackbeard has just taken 2 attacks from Lore's Kroom, right? In 2 attacks, Big Mom had broken multiple ribs and an arm.
True.
So Blackbeard's looking cool, but it also took a lot longer for Lore to whip out an awakening against Big Mom than it did against Blackbeard. And you could say that just is Lore not taking Blackbeard as a joke and, like, you know, Oda actually showing us some love there and showing us some of his abilities. Or you could also look at it and go, Blackbeard got himself in a situation where he could get hit really quickly and really early again because he's not as established. He's not like Shanks letting the fleet deal with it a little bit before he comes in after Kid gets tired.
Yeah.
You know
I think it also could be, like, he's, like, when Luffy jumped, get on the rooftop for the first time, and then, like, Red rocked Kaido in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just like if that was equivalent to Law's immediate showing against Blackbeard, it would be like, dude, he just walked in and just smashed him into the ground and wrecked him in like one hit right off the bat. And you'd be looking at Blackbeard being like, dude, you're weak, you know? But I guess, like, I think that the main thing with that scene was sort of to show that Kid and Law now
are on that
proper stronger.
They're on that proto Yonko level. They're above the first commanders.
From their fight.
They're above the first commanders, even if it's not in the terms of like an actual, like they're completely over them. There are terms of the world that are above the first commanders in the sense that they're their own captain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're a proto Yonko. They're not a part of one of the Yonko crews. They're like, are they gonna take one out yet? Maybe? Yeah? No? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the awesome ground we sit in here. Because you know what the crazy thing about all that is? That I find like just like I don't know how to handle.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have to have winners of these fights, and the question is, what makes more sense to you? Blackbeard winning or losing? What makes more sense?
Winning.
Kid winning or losing? What makes more sense?
Losing.
So you've got 2 of the already established Yonko winning, right?
Yeah.
Where's the upset? Or is that just to specifically give them all of Law and Kid's poneglyphs and essentially put them in the exact same position as Luffy right now? So it feels like a 3-way deadlock between them for the One Piece.
So I have no clue what the hell Oda is thinking in terms of Kid fighting Shanks, but in regards to Law and Blackbeard, I think if Blackbeard just straight up takes out Law and takes out Blackbeard, and takes out Garp,
yep,
that's like enough upset. That's like, holy crap. Like, it's just hyping, basically. It's not really an upset. It's just a hype.
See,
It's
to me, that's a hype.
Got a lot of hype now.
To me, that's a hype tool. There's no upset there. Because to me, the upset, the upset would be the obvious choice, losing. And the obvious choice to me is Shanks and Blackbeard winning.
Yeah.
But that feels wrong, because if we just go for those obvious choices, it's going to be like... At the end of the series, when Luffy's Pirate King, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are still going to be other people on the sea that are quote-unquote his rivals, but they're just not him.
Yeah.
Is that Shanks and Blackbeard, or is that Kid and Law? Because whoever wins these fights, there's a good argument to be had that the loser dies.
I get what you mean. I just think it's like so unreasonable to expect either, like, for them to win would be equivalent or probably even more than Luffy beating Kaido straight up at the start of Wano. Like, you know how he was going into Wano and it was like, there's no way he's going to beat Kaido. He's just not Yonko level. And it's like, oh, I don't know, but he beat a First Division commander. There's not really much of a gap there to really break. Maybe he just has to have some big boost. Yeah, and then you see the gap and it's like, okay, no, this doesn't happen. And then he has to train and get like 3 different power-ups. and then he has to have help from other people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right?
Yep.
Just to bridge that gap. So to me, it's like it's just so unrealistic to think that Law and Kid could take out a Yonko, especially considering they don't even have favorable matchups. They're getting actually ganged up against.
Yep.
Like it's not even like the entire of Law's crew against just Blackbeard, and they've caught him off guard. It's the actual opposite of that.
It's their whole Yonko crew's rolled up on a makeshift crew, and they're like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
And see, this is the thing, because there's a potential upset in both situations. Right?
Mm.
Okay. Law gets back up from Garp. What happens then?
Yeah, look, I could see it if it was Garp and Law.
Okay. Or Law loses, then Garp comes in. What happens then?
I could see it going either way.
Freshly barely beaten Law. Well, I say barely beaten,
Yeah.
but like beaten Law, but is injured. Blackbeard comes up against the hero of the Marines.
Here's the thing: is that Garp seems confident that he can take out Blackbeard, but at the same time, Garp, similar to Luffy and all those types of people, are the kind to just always be confident anyway.
Yep.
And I also think that Garp probably underestimates how much he's fallen off and overestimates how strong he still is, and underestimates how strong Blackbeard is.
What happens?
So I think if he was as strong as he thinks he is, and Blackbeard was as weak as he thinks he is, he's got a reason to be confident. But I think he's going to get a bit of a surprise.
What happens if it isn't a one-on-one? I know this is going to sound like a freaking real... Like, this is going to sound like a joke, right? What happens if they free Kobe first and it's Kobe, Garp, and Helmeppo versus Blackbeard?
Garp, Kobe, and Helmeppo are going to have to get a fucking power-up.
I mean, I don't disagree in the slightest. And you know who the first person in that situation that's going out is, right? But there is a possibility there that something like that happens.
Yeah, look, it would be really cool, and it would be a bit of a legendary thing, because it would be like, yeah, now Kobe is like the hero of the Marines. He fought with the old hero of the Marines against an evil blah blah blah.
And the crazier things about that is, we have room for a Rocks flashback there, because Blackbeard named his ship the Saber of Zebek, and Garp is the only surviving member now of the Rocks Pirates. Like, from that fight.
Yeah.
It's Garp and Rayleigh, and I don't see Rayleigh showing up.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one possibility there. Possibility number two, over on the Shanks side, is, like I said the other day, we've got Dory and Broggy on his side. That's awesome. But to the rest of Giant Kind, Kid just took out their biggest adversary in all of history.
True.
Right? What would happen if the Giants say he having been a hero of Elbaf, essentially, I'm sorry we have to do this, Red Hair, but part of being in Elbaf is a warrior's code, right?
Yeah.
What if the Giants end up saying you have to fight Kid one-on-one? Your crew can't get involved on either side. Because the Giants, say the Giants love both Kid and Shanks for different reasons in different ways, and they're like, we don't want you guys to fight, but we also love to fight, and we know what it's like for a warrior's pride. You guys are going to have to fight each other.
I don't think it can make a difference, to be honest. I think
Kid
just gets smashed by Shanks.
That's right.
Yeah.
What?
The thing with Shanks is that, like, Big Mum can be memed. Kaido can even kind of be memed. But Shanks is just not a character that can be memed.
Okay. What about...
Like, you have to just be better than him.
What about in possible other situations then? Thinking about Kid, who could ally with Kid? Do you know who we haven't seen make a move yet?
Who?
The
Arouge?
Mercenary Cross Guild.
Right.
Who is Cross Guild's most prominent member?
Mihawk.
Which could be a good backing for Kid.
I don't see why Mihawk would want to fight Shanks, though.
It may not be that he wants to fight him, it may be that it's part of what their organization is being told to do. Because the reason he didn't fight him at Marineford is because he goes, I agreed to fight Whitebeard, not Shanks. But that didn't necessarily mean that he wasn't willing to fight Shanks. It just means, like, in a potential way to look at that there was just like, we accomplished our goal, I'm going home.
I just mean, like, Buggy and Crocodile are not going to say to him, you've got to go kill Shanks. It's just going to be like, nah, make me.
Oh god, that's loud. Got the water coming through there. Nah, it's all good. There's a lot of possibilities at this point in time, though. You know what I mean? Because there's way too many X factors in play here. Like you said,
Yeah.
where's Arouge?
Oda obviously has a thing.
I think Arouge is actually already in Elbaf.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because in Sky Island, we saw that there are giants on maps in Skypiea. We know that there's a summit of High West that you can get into the Sky Island normally. The closest thing we've seen being able to take you up to a Sky Island is seemingly whatever that giant structure is, which is probably a giant tree in Elbaf, right? Last time we saw Arouge, he was on a Sky Island, so I dare say he went from that Sky Island to Elbaf and descended.
You know what would actually be really interesting?
What?
If he'd already been to Elbaf and they said to him, if you want to join us, you need to prove to us that you're like a powerful warrior. And then, in order to prove that, he went and picked a fight with Big Mom,
and took out
who's their enemy, and took out one of the commanders to come back and say, "I'm a warrior. I took out Snack."
Yeah.
And then that's why. And then they let him in.
That's possible. Because I don't see him fitting in anywhere else in the story at this point, and he's already got a few kind of connections to Elbaf.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, as the one dude that can grow in size and buff up, fighting giants makes sense for his character.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if anyone's going to get hit once and then double up and get huge, it's Arouge, right? So that makes sense for his character. But at that same point in time, it's like, there's so many threads here. Because as I showed you on that map I made a couple of weeks back in that, like, we've got that fleet coming from all sorts of directions at the moment that are going to potentially intersect with all of these conflicts. And the problem is, we don't know. We know that Kizaru's with them. We don't know if any other admirals are with them. But we know Green Bull is in between Blackbeard's Island and Elbaf, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of possibilities for a lot of crazy shit to happen here. The problem is, it's where these it's where the free agents that are floating are going to be craziest to see, right? For example, why did Weevil get captured already without us seeing a thing about him? Are we going to see more of Weevil? Or was the cool thing that we were going to see from Weevil the fact that he protected Whitebeard's hometown? And that was it.
Yeah.
Because
that's the weird thing, is that, like, so Oda would not have Oda wouldn't have brought out Weevil unless there was, like, a reason to do so. It's so weird to think that, like, because, okay, he's been taken away to a prison. My immediate thought, with unlimited time left in the series, is he gets taken to the new level 6, which is in, like, some kind of, like, floating prison that flies around the world. And that's why it's, like, so hard to... So that way, like, no one knows where it is. You can't go in and do what Blackbeard did and break prisoners out. And then somehow Straw Hats or someone has to go and break him out of the prison, or maybe he breaks out of the prison. But that would require a whole side story.
You know, that was the original...
Or at least cover story.
You know, that was the original plot of Film Red?
Was it?
Yeah, the original plot of film Red was New Impel Down was built, and it's a giant flying prison instead, and the Straw Hats were going to go and break out Bon Clay.
Bon Clay.
But that being said, Bon Clay is now currently in the position of level 5.5 in Impel Down. Dragon had Ivankov there to specifically break out prisoners at some point in time, right? No offense to Bon Clay, I love him, but that guy is definitely going to let someone like Dofi out just based on how he dresses. Right? With Weevil making his way down there, if we ever have a second breakout of Impel Down, the two main faces of it could very well be Doflamingo, former Warlord, and Edward Weevil, former Warlord, in the same vein of Crocodile and Jinbei, pre-time skip. We just wouldn't know who is fulfilling the role of, say, Luffy in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other possibilities. Do you know what would actually be a really crazy idea? Sabo washes up in Impel Down. After the Lucia Kingdom blew up. Like, instead of drowning, he just sort of, like, was waterboarded and floated into that area.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And you could have a breakout there with him fulfilling that role. It's just... All this...
You know what would be hectic?
What?
If Two Piece was... The main antagonist was the Cross Guild. And, like, they'd overthrown the world government and everything was fine. But now there was this super powerful organization called the Cross Guild with Buggy and Mihawk and Crocodile and Dofi and Weevil, and then a whole bunch of new pirates that came up and got really notorious. And they keep moving their base kind of like the Revs, and they're basically like almost like the new Revs, but an evil version, where they're like putting bounties on Marines and yada, 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 and causing a bunch of chaos. And that's like the main enemy now, is Cross Guild. And it all started because of fucking Buggy.
I'm going to throw, just because of what you were saying there, I'm going to throw a hypothetical out at you, and it's going to hurt. We haven't seen anyone yet attempt to and collect a Marine bounty for Cross Guild.
Yeah.
But we also have an insane fleet making a move in the New World.
True.
Making them a potential target for pirates and bounty hunters at the moment, alright?
Yeah, we've talked about this. That would be really cool if their whole fleet just got picked apart on the way.
What if instead of that, in a sick twist of fate, we know that the Yonko may potentially have dealings with Cross Guild, right?
Yeah.
You know how Whitebeard used to rookie crush people and go to the underground brokers and get them to cash in bounties, and that's how Whitebeard made his main source of income, being the world's best bounty hunter, essentially?
Yeah.
What if Blackbeard does that to Garp? Blackbeard beats Garp, takes it to Cross Guild to cash in the bounty. You see he's got like a 5 billion berry bounty, right? But you get that scene where you've got the top members of Cross Guild with Garp chained up. You got Buggy really cocky, like kicking him, being like, we got the hero of the Marines, we beat the hero of the Marines, this is awesome. Garp's like coming to, he's like, oh, you're that pipsqueak from Roger's crew. And shit like that.
Yeah.
And like, you're swapping between like really cocky Buggy and Buggy being like, I remember this guy beating the shit out of Roger. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, haha, we got you. Oh shit, we got you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be really funny. And then you'd have the likes of Mihawk, who would actually be someone there that could actually enforce it if Garp got out. Right? And you'd have the likes of Crocodile that'd be like, what can we do with Garp that'll be impressive? What if even, I never even thought of this as a possibility. Do you know what would be a really messed up twist?
Yeah.
Pre-time skip, what's the biggest event that happened?
The war.
Marineford, right?
Yeah.
What if the biggest event that happens post-time skip is Crosskilled going to execute a higher-up Marine?
Yeah, right.
We never even thought of that as a possibility, have we?
True.
If someone like Gart was going to be executed, how would it look to the world government? The hero of the Marines got caught and executed. And they did nothing.
Damn. The only problem is, how can you lock down Garp when you don't have a fruit?
What do you mean by that? Like, how can you...
Like, you can't just drown him in sea stone.
malnourish him, keep him cuffed, have some strong people like beat him while he's down already. Like
I guess Crocodile could like suck out all of his moisture.
Like say in a high diff fight, Garb just loses to Blackbeard, right?
Yeah.
But then just how like Ace in Impel Down, like you remember in Impel Down, Jinbei doesn't have a fruit, but Jinbei was cuffed and couldn't get out, and he was getting beaten and broken by the jailers.
Yeah.
You could have just the Cross Guild doing that to Garb.
What if Blackbeard gave him a shitty fruit?
Ooh, Garb one.
And then used it, and then used it to sea stone chain him.
That actually would be messed up.
Yeah.
But it would be like a good nerf, but also it could almost bring him back in a way.
You know how gold it would be if that happens, and then as that's like going on, that situation's going on, we learn more about how fruits awaken, and it is very much like, you know, you just have to have like a really strong body and a really strong will kind of thing, and then like Garp just like immediately awakens his fruit because it's just that badass.
I'm telling you right now, do you know what's happening?
Mm.
A clash out of nowhere, a rematch between Garp and Burgess. Now that Burgess has the buff fruit.
Yeah.
He'll be clashing with Garp.
I'd love that.
And like, Garp's gonna win because of the Haki. But remember,
I was gonna say,
Garp turned mountains into sandbags. What did we just see Burgess do?
Yeah. I was gonna say in our top whatever thing that we're talking about was like when we're talking about Burgess and stuff, I was gonna say, you laugh now, but when we see Burgess having just beat Garp into the ground without him even seeing
the problem is
Blackbeard.
The problem is people like Garp have better feats than Burgess without the fruit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you know how much I've tried to defend Burgess in the past, right?
But we haven't seen Burgess's feats yet. All we've seen is him casually lifting up a mountain. And by the way, lifting up a mountain, I would say, in anime logic, is harder than destroying a mountain.
Again, right? You know how hard I've defended this man. When people were like, he got low diffed one shot by Sabo, I was like, I don't know if you realize, but that was an even clash until Sabo used advanced armament.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at Luffy, the difference that advanced armament made, right? It's a big difference. It takes him from being like ulti level to being like king level. That's a huge jump, right? And I mean, like, people sitting there shitting on Burgess. It's just like, I think you forget, Sabo, in Dressrosa, Sabo fought an admiral and two vice admirals at the same time.
Yeah.
Sabo
after that was named the Flame Emperor.
Yeah. Like, Sabo ain't no slouch, right? Even if we haven't seen him do much, he ain't no slouch. And he's got some pretty good Haki feats going for him.
Like, you could genuinely say that, like, that Burgess's fight against Sabo puts him at first division level, just outright. Even if you didn't know that he's, like, first division. You could say, like, being able to hang against Sabo like that kind of puts you there. Because thinking about, like the amount of power boost that Luffy needed to get to bridge the gap from Katakuri to Kaido. And Katakuri is, like, top of first division commander level. And the amount of power-ups he needed to get to breach from just above first division commander level to Yonko was, like, insane. So the fact that Sabo only got called like a flame emperor after he got a busted ass Logia, and then probably a massive Haki bloom after fighting a bunch of admirals.
multiple times. Fought
Yeah.
Fujitora, fought Burgess, then fought Fujitora, and then came back for a second round after fighting the Blackbeard pirates. Actually, no, they fled from the Blackbeard pirates. Came back and then proceeded to fight 2 admirals.
Yeah. The fact that he could do that just by getting the fire fruit, he must have been so fucking busted before he even got the fire fruit.
He was already the first commander of the Revs before the fruit, right? If you look at Sabo versus Burgess in Dressrosa, I've always said it's like looking at a 3rd or 4th division commander combatant fighting over a 1st division commander level fruit.
Yeah.
And whoever got it instantly jumps to it. You know what I mean? And it's like, Sabo had the advanced armament already, which actually gives him a little bit of an extra buff there. Because if you look at Burgess there, I'm sorry, Burgess in Dressrosa has a better showcasing the fucking Jack.
Easily, what?
Right?
Burgess could shit on Jack with his left hand.
Yeah, from range. Literally, just goes, jab, punch, jab, punch, jab, punch. Jack's like, where is this shit coming from? Right? But that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, right? I don't get all the slander for Burgess. The only thing is, since then, right? Remember that after we had that top 50 discussion about it, I sent you that post that Oda did, right? Did you see that one?
Mm-hmm.
About the 2nd strongest on each crew. That's the only thing.
As in, like, the first mate?
No, not the first mate, the 2nd strongest. He specified that.
Yeah. But...
Not the first mates weren't all the 2nd strongest, is what he said. For example, Beppo's not the first mate, but is the 2nd strongest of the Heart Pirates.
Yeah, but Beppo is tied first mate with Penguin and Sachi. And he's obviously the most recognizable face.
But that's just what Oda said. And he put freaking Shiryu there. Right? And Burgess is the 1st division commander. Definitively. Where Shiryu's the 2nd division commander. And we already know that because it's actually in their titles.
Yeah. I mean, look, like, it's possible that Shiryu could be stronger than Burgess, but I think that is like a very much like a little like Oda thing of just like I want to put the swordsman there because Shiryu's cooler.
I mean,
like, I don't know.
He put Beppo there.
Yeah, but Beppo is the coolest person on Law's crew. Who is he going to put? Penguin, but not Sachi? Or Sachi, but not Penguin?
He could have put all 3 of them. Like, the trifecta.
Like, just 3 heads?
Yeah, the three-headed Hydra.
Like Blackbeard's flag, but each of their heads.
Yeah. But, I mean, shit. They put Shiryu in the same light, and it's sad that we have to say the same light. They put him in the same light as Rayleigh, Ben Beckman, Katakuri, King, Marco, Killer, Beppo, and Zoro. Also, I find it hilarious that they had Beppo in that situation, laying down, trying to do a sexy pose. I like that is so disrespectful in the funniest way to me. You know what I mean?
Law just like he can't cut a break, that dude. He's just got such a crap crew.
Dude, I can't even say that he's got a crap crew because his crew's like showing more impressive stuff than I thought they were going to now. But it's like, why show it now when we could have actually showed it and been impressed by it?
Yeah.
Like, if we had...
I don't know, though, like the feats of Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin put together is, like, maybe...
Yeah, but...
Nah, not even killer level.
But Jean Bart's out here taking shots from the strongest snipers in the world to the gut, and just like, it's nothing. Ugh.
Yeah.
I mean, low-key, that's almost... I don't know if that makes Van Orga look shit, or if that makes Jean Bart look better. Like, is that... okay. Is the fact that Van Orga's bullets didn't pierce Jean Bart making him look like the likes of Izzo is just a way better shooter than him?
I think John Bart's just supposed to be like a big tough meat man, and that's kind of like what he does. You know, like
Okay,
he can punch kind of hard, but he's
would
not like a
would Jean
super hard
Bart
puncher. But he's just a big meat slab.
would Jean Bart be able to tank bullets from Yasop with
Nah.
nothing? See, would he be able to?
Well, I don't know.
Would he be able
I mean,
to?
to be fair, I don't consider Van Org as that like potent.
But he is the third commander of their crew.
Yeah, that's the problem with the Blackbeard pirates. Is like everyone except for Shiryu
Burgess.
and Burgess just seems kind of crap.
Which the warp fruit is it's ridiculously impressive and it's super good use like.
Well, yeah,
utility.
that's the thing. Like, you could argue that their crew is like insane because of the fruits that they have. I just more mean like in terms of like raw strength and power kind of thing.
Imagine if he's a sniper, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if his sniper bullets are actually kind of shit, but how he snipes is he lines up his target and he teleports to them, grabs them, and teleports them over like open water, and teleports back.
Right. Yeah, that would be cracked.
So he just like jumps in and drags them out and leaves them in the middle of no man's land.
Uh-huh.
That would actually be pretty scary. And like Usopp's got to counter him by like using great observation haki to see where he's going to teleport to and predicting where he's going to teleport to like defend those people before he can grab them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I won't talk about that here. Jesus Christ, we've been going for 2 hours and 30 minutes. Do you want to wrap up here?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Any theories or comments for the next chapter? Actually, are we on break? We are not on break.
No.
That's good. That is really good.
It's really weird. It has the chapter end thing, and then it does a whole other page. Did you notice that?
Oh, true. It does.
Yeah, that's why
okay.
earlier when you said, "Oh, do you see the last chapter?" I already had that page where it said chapter end. I figured that was the last page.
It'd be a double page spread, so that's the right page, and that last page is the left page on it.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So it would be all the one page, but that's just how it sort of...
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, okay. Alright. That being said, I've got no theories. We've already talked enough about next chapter and that. We're just going to have to wait and see. I'm excited.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I'm not super keen on the... Oh, who is it kind of thing. I just kind of want the water to kick off. I'm
keen on it. But I want it to be shocking, and I want to know within the next 2 chapters.
Yeah, I want it to be quick. Yeah, for sure.
Because,
or at least, I don't know. I guess like they are like progressively doing more crazy stuff. Like I think it is cool to have that idea of like helplessness. Like everyone's just getting killed, and you're just like, I don't even know who the hell it is.
True.
That is cool. Like because Shaka went straight up. Shaka being probably the most important of the stellar bodies.
Just got wiped out.
Although, just going down.
I'd like to point out, him getting wiped out here may not have been a kill shot. We may actually see what he looks like under the helmet.
Well, that's the thing as well. There's blood. So he's not all robo. So he's organic.
Or at least partially organic.
Are the other ones showing any signs of being organic?
Yeah, some of them have.
Because I had assumed that they were all completely robotic.
Well, there are some that are clearly robotic, like Pythagoras and Edison.
Yeah.
But then the likes of Lilith and Shaka are obviously more human. And then there's ones like Lilith. Oh, sorry, not Lilith. What's the other girl? Atlas? Who's both, seemingly.
Right.
So okay. I'd say all of them. I'd say all of them have human components, but the ones that look more human, have maybe like less obvious augmentation. So they have more like blood areas, kind of like the pacifistas, but they're all robots. Essentially, like robots.
I gotta say, that panel of the bullet going through his head is brutal,
dude. I love it.
Yeah.
Oda, some of the art,
and just before, like the little tip of the gun barrel, and then the click, and then you scroll down, and then it's bang, and then his head's exploding. It's like holy shit.
And the way Vegapunk is like, shit. Like, he's shook.
Yeah.
He's shook.
Yeah.
I've been loving the art this arc. Like, I've also loved...
Actually,
I also loved at the beginning of the arc when we got to see the shark at first coming out of the water.
yeah.
Oh my god.
That was true. That was a really cool one, yeah.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
One little thing to note, the very last thing that they say, you know how they have a little blurb at the end of the chapter, it says, snuffing out hope with a single shot.
Yeah.
Obviously, it could just be like hyperbole, but that to me is like, whatever Vegapunk is looking at right now is like, oh shit, there's no hope. Like, whoever this person
is taking the
has
hope
like
away.
crushed all of their hope. Yeah.
Alright, that being said, let's wrap the stream up there. Thank you for coming by, guys. Cheers for being here as well, Eggs. You want to say goodbye, my dude?
Goodbye.
Peace. Until the next chapter of One Piece, or until the next video of As You Watch, whatever it is you're here for. Nothing but love, nothing but respect. Have a damn good day. Cheers for sticking by for the last 2.5 hours. Goodbye.